Faith Fulfilled, Book 2, The Cursed Diamonds, Chapter 4, Purity Diluted.
Whoa, Lucas, breathe. Just take a second to catch your breath, then tell us what you need to say.
Lucas just repeats himself again.
Everyone in the village is gone.
What do you mean they're gone?
Lucas takes in a big breath.
They're gone! They're all dead!
The room falls silent. Not a single sound. If a needle was dropped on the floor, you would be able to hear the faint clang as it hit the ground.
We were all minding our own business, going about our day, when these mysterious figures entered the village. The villagers welcomed them and asked if they wanted to trade. I was watching from a short distance away. Before I knew it, one of them took their sword out and killed the two villagers who greeted them. It turned slow motion, watching them fall lifeless onto the ground.
The silence returned, as Lucas was trying to catch his breath again.
Everyone began running and screaming in panic. I ran off to try and find Frank and Isabella, but I got caught up in the commotion of the crowd. When I was fighting my way through the crowd, I heard so many sounds. Sounds I will never forget. I heard screaming. I heard crying. I heard people dying.
Lucas begins to tremble furiously, and his eyes begin to water.
When the attack started, the screaming was so unbelievably loud. But as it went on, the screams began to get quieter and quieter. Until when I finally did find shelter for myself, it was dead silent. All the voices I heard, they just vanished. I waited a while to see if they would leave, thinking they had gotten everybody. After what seemed like forever, I stepped outside. But as soon as I did, they pounced on me from behind. With one blow, they knocked me out cold. I thought I was dead, and apparently they must have thought I was too, because I did wake up again later. My legs felt like they were on fire, but once I got a grasp on what was going on, I again tried to find Frank and Isabella. When I reached their house, I stopped in my tracks. I saw them both lying there, on the ground, dead. They were beaten in ways beyond what I could possibly describe in words. Their deaths were anything but quick, so I ran off in the direction I saw you guys leave in, and somehow, I found my way here.
Destiny looked up at Mike and Clyde. Clyde had tears furiously streaming down his cheeks. Mike, on the other hand, was just standing there, paralyzed. It was as if he was frozen in stone. Clyde fell onto his knees and began to shout as loud as his voice would allow. Using every obscene word he knew in the English language, he continued shouting and shouting. Destiny couldn't possibly think of a way to appropriately react to the situation unfolding before her very eyes. Clyde cried out Isabella into the ceiling above him countless times, his voice becoming more and more hoarse with each scream.
I'm the only survivor.
Clyde took a moment to look over at Mike from the floor, and gave him a long glare. Mike looked down at his grieving friend, catching the look he was being sent, understanding fully the reason for it.
If it wasn't for all this legacy holder nonsense, I could have been there to protect her. I could have been there with her.
Clyde croaks out as fresh tears stream down his face. Closing his eyes, Michael walked past Lucas and out the door into the cold outside world. Destiny wanted to follow him and help, but Amy put her arm out and looked at her. Her gaze told Destiny not to go. Not yet. The air outside was below freezing, but Mike couldn't feel it at all. The heat of his anger kept him warm. So much, in fact, that he was actually sweating. His breathing was heavy and his movements were slight. He had so much pent-up rage, and he didn't know what to do with it.
First it was Drake. Now, Isabella, Frank. All the villagers, they're dead. All because I wasn't there to protect them. All because I decided to go be the hero I thought I needed to become. Some hero I am.
Over the snowy mountains and across the lands, a castle of malevolence lay still. Ebony and Kyle walked through the darkened hallways, both troubled with guilt.
I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this.
We were ordered to do the task, and we did it with excellence. Your feelings of remorse will fade. We will surely be rewarded for what we've done.
At the end of the hallway were two giant golden doors. Pulling the doors open, the two make their way into a lit room. The room is filled with all kinds of expensive jewels and trinkets. At the center was a diamond and emerald throne, where Brian himself sat waiting for them. When they made their way to the throne, they each fell on their knees before their master.
Has the deed been done?
Yes, Master.
There are no survivors?
None. We've searched the entire village after it went silent. No one was to be found, just lifeless bodies.
You're sure that no one escaped?
If anyone did, then they'll live the rest of their lives hiding away. Villagers are cowards, after all.
Very well. You may leave now.
Kyle lifted up his head in surprise.
Did you not hear what I said? Leave.
You said we'd be getting rewarded for this.
Out! Now!
Ebony quickly gets to her feet, grabs Kyle's shirt collar, and sprints out of the room. Brian briefly glares at the door after they made their exit.
Dogs need to know when to obey their master.
Lifting himself up off his shiny throne, he walks over to the side of the room, where a small black circle was placed. The circle was just big enough to fit his 2 feet without going outside it. Stepping up onto it, he then kneels down, just as Ebony and Kyle had before him. Small bright lights begin to appear on the ends of the circle as he makes his kneel. Keeping his head pointed toward the floor, he watches as each light switches on. In a moment's notice, the room begins to get darker and smoky. A roar of fire and lava is heard getting closer as the room begins to heat up. Looking up at last, Brian watches as his father's smoky form looks down on him.
What is it?
Brian points his head back down at the floor.
As you commanded, the boy's home has been destroyed.
I know. I watched it all. What a beautiful slaughter it was. Not a shred of mercy. And, as I predicted, one of them would escape to tell Mike the bad news.
I think he has enough negative energy now. You can control him.
You're right.
So when should I be expecting him to arrive?
He won't be.
Brian looked up at his father with surprise.
What?
You heard me. He won't be. I still have other plans.
You told me that after this, I would have a new servant. Now you tell me I have to wait more? I'm sick of all this waiting around. You never give me a straight answer. I'm sick of dealing with those 2 weaklings. I deserve more.
Just before he could finish, a strong blast of hot wind sent Brian flying across the room. Jewels, paintings, and other expensive trinkets come flying off the shelves they rested on, crashing and shattering onto the floor below. Brian slams straight into the iron wall and falls onto the golden floor. Blood drips from his head as he struggles to get back to his feet. Andrew's ghostly form moves across the room to meet Brian, who was still laying on the floor.
How did you put it again? Dogs need to know how to obey their master.
Brian got up to his knees and looked at his father.
With every tragedy that he goes through, his self-hatred and desperation grows, until such emotions generate negative energy. Until now, he was too pure of heart in order for me to corrupt him. So, yes, I have the power to take control, but I want him to generate more. The more negative energy he holds when I take him over, the more powerful he will become. Think about it, Brian. He hasn't even found out that Ray is his father yet. Imagine how much grief that will cause him to know that his own father abandoned him at birth because he thinks he's a monster? And how about when the rest of his surviving friends are killed? These events will all generate negative energy. All these traumatic experiences will make him stronger. And having stronger bonds will be a great asset. Wouldn't you agree?
Brian just nodded his head and continued to listen to his father's every command.
You know, the guy we're going after, he has the power to save us.
Ebony stops dead in her tracks.
You know that, right?
I know, Kyle.
So, why are we making ourselves enemies of his? He can send us home.
Home? Kyle, have you already forgotten the horrible, evil things we've done? Even if he does set our souls free, we'll just be sent to the Nether to suffer even more. Any torture that Brian and Andrew brings on us in this world is nothing compared to the torment we would receive from Herobrine in the Nether. It's far too late for us, Kyle.
But maybe we won't. Nosh must know that we've been trapped inside of their control.
Ebony took a long breath and said,
Kyle, any chance we had of ascending to the Aether has long since passed.
Then why don't we redeem ourselves? Join up with the legacy holder.
Kyle, have you forgotten about the cursed diamonds inside us? Both Brian and Andrew have the power to wipe us from existence at any given moment. As soon as either of them suspect even the slightest hint of betrayal, we will be destroyed. We're eternally bound to them.
Kyle looked down at the grass below him.
It's a reality we're going to have to live with.
Ebony took another long sigh and continued forward. Kyle eventually snapped out of his trance and then hurried to catch up with her.